What's up everyone, Arthur here. Welcome back to the Switch Hidden Gems from the Void series. I have a bunch more lesser known games to show you this time. A few of these are special games that people may have heard about but never really understood what they're all about. And I know the channel has been a bit slow as of late. I've been concentrating on another professional endeavor, but the good news is that I'm getting closer to streamlining that project, so soon it will require far less of my time, so I'll go back to having more time to devote to the channel and post videos more often. That should happen within 2 months, so by the end of this year. Just a little bit of housekeeping here. To kinda compensate for my absence, I have 2 giveaways this time, 2 copies of the fantastic retro style RPG Sea of Stars. I'm really stoked about that. Both are for the Nintendo Switch. To participate, simply be subscribed to the channel and comment below with the words "Sea from the Void" so I can find everyone easily. Do not share your contact information yet, cause YouTube blocks comments that attempt to do so, very annoyingly by the way, so wait for the prize draw, which will take place on November 11th. On that date, I will draw 2 winners and I will reply to their comments with the instructions to receive the codes. So if you decide to participate, check your YouTube page around November 11th. So alright, without further ado, welcome to the channel. This is From the Void. Alright, to begin we have something very special. This is a cult classic from way back that is definitely not for everyone, but for the right audience, this is undeniably delightful. I'm gonna talk a lot about this one, because this game is different from everything out there, and I really think most people don't know what it's all about. We're talking about Moon. Okay, this was originally a PlayStation 1 game from 1997 that only came out in Japan under the name Moon Remix RPG Adventure. Almost 23 years later, the West finally got an official release of this game, apparently now simply called Moon. It had already achieved cult classic status even before the official localization, especially since the release of Undertale. A game filled with similarities to Moon. Actually, Toby Fox has even confirmed that he drew a lot of inspiration from this game. Now, like I said, this is not for everyone. Moon calls itself a RPG without the battles, and that's a fitting description because there is a typical RPG plot going on behind the scenes here, and it's clearly based on Dragon Quest I actually. The king summons the hero to defeat the Dragon Lord, very typical RPG stuff. The game, however, completely flips that premise on its head and questions its entire reasoning. We see the hero traveling around in his genocidal pursuit of leveling up by killing every creature he comes across for experience points. The player is not the hero, you're instead someone who doesn't really belong to this world, so then you come across all kinds of animal corpses that the hero left behind, and the main thing you do in this game is to find a way to rescue the creature's souls. Yeah. Crazy, right? Gameplay wise, however, there is little to no actual gameplay here. Most reviewers, if you take a look online, will call this a point-and-click adventure game, but a more fitting description, in my opinion, would be Harvest Moon without the farming plus point-and-click adventure aspects. And that's because you have direct control of your character, there are several little activities you can perform like fishing, and there's a whole passage of time aspect with not only day and night cycles but also weekly cycles, where every NPC has a defined schedule that they repeat on a weekly basis. The game is all about wandering around and talking to people, searching for ways to reach new areas, and how to fulfill people's needs, as well as how to rescue the animal souls. And that's why Moon is not for everyone. The actual gameplay, like I said, is almost non-existent, it's very slow-paced, and it comes with a, at first, annoying gameplay loop that will almost inevitably cause you a number of game overs in the beginning, because if you run out of love, yeah, love, love Undertale. See, your character faints and it's back to the last save point, and the simple passage of time depletes your love. So until you get used to how all that works and how to avoid fainting, this game has a high potential to be frustrating, especially nowadays as gameplay design has almost completely moved on from game overs and big losses of progress. But what Moon has to offer really supersedes the negative or outdated aspects. It actually justifies some of them. This game has outstandingly great characters, world building, fantastic soundtrack, it even allows you to program your set list, and it's especially brilliant in the writing aspect, filled with satires of RPGs like Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy and Pokemon, and eventually the gameplay loop is vindicated here. Getting to know the extremely creative and well-written characters in this crazy but somehow believable world eventually starts feeling very satisfying and rewarding, providing a great sense of progression. Some of these characters will occupy a space in my mind forever, like the baker guy who has an insanely disturbing secret, I'm never gonna forget that, and the old Japanese guy who hates everything and everyone except traditional Japanese music. And so many more. But even though the game is wonderful in so many ways, it doesn't solve the issue for people who need their games to have deep gameplay or can't stand the slow pace. So I hope you're not one of them, because this game is lovely for anyone who can appreciate it for what it is. Moon is from some of the staff that worked on Super Mario RPG. There is even a fun Easter egg here where a Mario looking doll crashes out of a toy car, and this happens inside the room of the spiritual successor of Geno, or Geno, however you pronounce it. This game is also from the same writer of Tulip, a PlayStation 2 game that I talked about before that also grew on me a lot, and this Switch release has a physical version from Limited Run Games that comes with a ever so useful manual that reveals a lot of the weird gameplay mechanisms and was a joy to follow along while playing. So I strongly suggest either getting the physical version or downloading the manual online. Digitally, this has gotten periodic discounts and the price is more than fair. So if you're a veteran gamer looking for a unique game that is unafraid to try different things, check this one out if you can, and stick with it past its rocky beginnings. It will soon become a beautiful game. Next we have adrenaline pumping and finely tuned Swordship. Swordship is a recent game, but it's yet to receive duly recognition in my opinion. This kinda went by very much under the radar, and that's a real shame cause this is totally a kick-ass game. It calls itself a shoot 'em up without the shooting, and while that sounds underwhelming probably, what you do is kinda cool actually. You use enemies' shots and attacks against themselves to get rid of them. You can both avoid by dodging or by diving down for a couple of seconds in order to trick the drones to kill one another. In the meanwhile, you have to stay in the yellow lines when they show up to collect the containers, then on the yellow pads to deliver them, so you can grab the next one. And this whole dynamic feels awesome. The fact that you don't have to worry about shooting or attacking makes it possible to concentrate on moving around and dodging the incredible amount of incoming projectiles, mines and explosives, while at the same time worrying about the containers. The tricks you can pull off are really creative because the enemies have varied and interesting attacks, so this gets lots of fun. It is also a really difficult game that has both arcade aspects as well as roguelike aspects, so you can expect a tall challenge here. But the progression is actually brilliant, insanely well balanced, full of replayability, and always a joy to choose whether to open your container to improve your ship and get extra lives, or to trade them in for more points so you can unlock the roguelike stuff. And the soundtrack in this game is awesome, by the way, so if you're looking for a different kind of fast-paced action game with a tough challenge, Swordship is a great option. It's a digital only so far. Moving on to Ugly. Ugly is a haunting game. It will stay with you for a while, guaranteed. The story here is one of the best aspects. It leans into disturbing and traumatic subjects. Listen to this. Your character was rejected by his father as a baby because of his unappealing appearance. The father becomes incredibly cruel towards his child, while the mother tries to protect him. But this is presumably taking place in times when the woman had little to no say in family decisions, so we are also witnessing her suffering. This premise sets the tone for the entire game with an amazing orchestrated soundtrack capable of reflecting and intensifying it a lot, so this becomes a rather emotional experience, and it contrasts with the cartoonish and colorful visuals. Quite nice ones actually, as well as the gameplay, which is cerebral and kind of chill most of the time. This is a puzzle platformer with a rather interesting gimmick. Your character has a crystal-shaped mirror that he can place in any nearby surface. Once you do so, it creates a mirrored image of yourself. The image will mimic all your moves, but to the opposite direction, and once you have it in your desired position, you can switch the real character with the mirrored image. That can also be done in the vertical alignment too. And of course, the game keeps tweaking the formula and adding interesting things into the mix, such as what happens when you place the mirror on a moving platform. Now, I said that this game is chill most of the time, and that's because it also counts with boss fights. They're still puzzle platformer oriented, but now with a cool urgency aspect, because you can die during them and will have to find the solution of the entire boss puzzle and perform it entirely without making any mistakes. Ugly is a great puzzle platformer that deserves a lot more spotlight, so I'm happy to feature it here. This is a recent release from September 2023, so it's yet to receive any meaningful discounts, and so far no notice of a planned physical release. Out of an abundance of recent Switch shoot-em-ups that have been getting some mainstream attention as of late, one that is excellent but has gotten little to no attention is Jamestown Plus. This is an enhanced version of a game from 2011 that only came out on PCs, and this version adds more chapters to the campaign, which is a very welcome addition because this is a beautiful and impressively well done and balanced shooter. It also has a lot of style in the entire presentation, bringing a modern look to this very old genre of games. Jamestown is a hard game full of bullet hell situations, but the controls are easy to learn and take advantage of, even though you have a lot of freedom to build your own ship with many different weapons and special attack types. The story is also pretty interesting, and the replayability is through the roof, even going as far as tying some of the normal campaign progression to the higher difficulties, and in a way that doesn't feel forceful because the game incentivizes the replayability in many different ways. Whether solo or in couch co-op with up to 4 players, Jamestown is a joy to look at and play, one of the best options in this now embarrassingly rich genre on the Switch. Prices are very low too, and this also received the physical treatment from Limited Run. Now, one of my favorites on today's list, and one that deserves way more recognition, is Iris and the Giant. As you can see from the footage, this is a deck builder, but differently from other deck builders that may be running through your head, the actual act of building your deck is secondary here. The game is much more focused on the strategy aspect, which is fucking phenomenal in this game. Seriously, simply brilliant. This is a tough game, mostly because the campaigns are long, with over 20 stages and loads of secret optional ones, so surviving for that long will prove to be all kinds of challenging. You battle against the monsters instead of an opponent that also has cards, and I personally like this style much better. The only hurdle in this game is getting to learn what each card does, but they are well explained and really simple to understand. Axes will attack all enemies in the front row, flames will attack all enemies in a column, swords attack only one enemy, but you can use all swords in your hand at once, and so many more. It gets super super interesting, with loads of also very well explained enemies with crazy abilities, and you quote-unquote level up a lot in this game as you go. There are two kinds of leveling up, one that allows you to hone your stats like more health, and another one that grants you magical skills that improve how you use your cards. But the most important thing about Iris and the Giant is how brilliant and well balanced the whole strategy is. I can't stress that enough. I had a blast with this game. There are no physicals of it, sadly, but you get some hefty discounts, making it more than worth the cost. Pick this one up for sure if you're into strategy games, even if deck building is not your thing. Next, a rhythm game like nothing else, Vectronom. Here we go. This is a blast. You control this cubic shape and can move freely, but the stage keeps changing to the beat, requiring you to also behave on the beat in order to surpass the ever-changing obstacles. Even when there are no hazards, the game rewards you for moving on the beat. And it feels awesome because the soundtrack is pretty dope. The game gets real tough, right about 30% in, and stays that way for the duration, so this is for people looking for a challenge with loads of interesting rhythmic obstacles to surpass. This game did receive a physical release from Red Art Games, and it's rather cheap, and even more so digitally for $9.99 or down to $3.99, which was its all-time lowest price so far. Moving on to the sieving Lunistice. This may look like a kid-friendly 3D platformer, like so many PlayStation 1 and N64 games with similar visuals, but let me tell you right now, you know what this is? This is a hardcore 3D precision platformer. And if you think about it, there are lots of 2D precision platformers, with a trend that probably popularized with Super Meat Boy and VVV many years back, and continues with several other excellent games such as Dungeon in a Bottle, Run a World Between. Check those out in my best platformers video, link in the corner, and of course the incredible Celeste. But when it comes to 3D platformers, there has not been much of anything at all, so right now Lunistice stands tall in that underpopulated subcategory. The platforms are sometimes as slim as your character's feet, it's brutal, but also pretty cool. The game is not stingy with checkpoints, the controls are freaking great, and also simple and easy to learn. There's only a double jump and a spin attack that serves as a triple jump as well. And that's it. Everything else is just a bunch of well-crafted level designs to test your 3D platforming skills. Graphics and music feel very fitting, and there's a little bit of storytelling tied to the hardest collectibles that also unlock the final stage with a true ending of sorts. Plus, once you finish it, you unlock even harder modes tied to the two unlockable characters that control differently, and those will effectively double or triple the size of the game to potentially over 10 hours, which is well worth the cheap $4.99 full price or $3.99 discounted price that it has gotten so far. Next, we're taking a look at a game that got a great reception. It received like 10 minutes of spotlight, then faded into obscurity, and I feel like a lot of people forgot about Dandy Ace. This is an isometric style action roguelike. Due to the camera angle and roguelike nature, comparisons to Hades are unavoidable. But different from the revered accolades winner Hades, which focuses a lot more on melee and is incredibly fast-paced, Dandy Ace is much more focused on projectiles and is overall a much simpler game, which I know for a fact may be a positive to a lot of people looking for a great game, but a more to the point one instead of a sprawling 50 hours long roguelike. Dandy Ace sticks to the basics and does all of them very well. Your abilities can be assigned to each face button as you choose, and the coolest thing about them is the secondary effect they have, which allows you to create combos of abilities for a huge variety of interesting effects. For instance, my favorite is a teleportation ability that creates a blue area that causes low damage to enemies for a few seconds. But then once you couple this ability with the punch one, the enemies that find themselves in the blue bubble are now vulnerable with diminished defense. So now not only the damage from the bubble is more interesting, but all the damage you caused is enhanced. And that kind of thing can be done to all your abilities, with a huge number of possibilities. The roguelike nature is similar to many games of this kind, only a few things are carried over forwards between the runs, but the game does a good job of balancing your progression in a great way, with several different paths you can take to reach the ending, are a lot of different unlockables, including some permanent ones that are much more expensive with a bigger and more thrilling risk-reward gamble, and very cool boss fights with challenging patterns to learn and overcome. Try it out if you're into this kind of game, it's getting substantial discounts too. Then we have ElecHead. This one is awesome, straight up. It has a very cool visual style, 8-bit but awesome looking color palettes that you can change in the menu, by the way. The gameplay is simply great. Your battery robot guy has a head charged with electricity, so whatever it touches is imbued with electric power. So that's how you make all sorts of things turn on in the stages. To provide a nice interesting twist, the gimmick is that you can throw your head and keep moving the body, but the catch is that you can't survive longer than 10 seconds without your head. This adds a fantastic layer to the puzzle platforming aspect, and it's used in so many different ways. This game is rather genius in terms of level design and the puzzles themselves. This is one of the best games of its kind for sure, check it out. It's rather cheap, even full price, and it's already getting discounts even though it's a rather recent game. Next, a very hidden gem and a touching, heartfelt game called How to Say Goodbye. This is a puzzle game with a unique gimmick I had never seen before. Each stage has a grid, you will see a door somewhere, your character is spread about, and some items like keys and buttons, but you can't control the characters directly. Instead, you move the floor like it's made of conveyor belts. This is very weird at first, but there is a whole logical mechanism that determines how the floors will move once you drag them around. This very unusual gameplay is kind of hypnotizing, I gotta say. It's puzzle oriented but not overly complicated. It's much more about trial and error and close observation, as you need to bring the objects like keys close to the character so you can grab them, then move all your characters to the marked spaces close to the exit door. In the end, it's a simple but effective puzzle gameplay not found anywhere else to my knowledge. The setting of this game also deserves a major highlight. The narrative is all about coping with the loss of a loved one, which could have been a heavy, hard to endure plot, but they intentionally placed a very positive spin to the whole thing. It's quite enjoyable to go through it, while at the same time providing food for thought. So yeah, How to Say Goodbye is lovely all the way through, a wonderful puzzle game in a weird, surreal world with a pretty fun color palette and a touching story very much worth experiencing. No physicals for this one, and so far only a small discount. This is a pretty awesome one, Kharon's Crypt. This is an excellent game. It is intentionally going for a Game Boy Color aesthetic, even including a mock-up of the Game Boy Color layout. The premise here is interesting. You are Death itself, who has been locked up in the most inescapable dungeon ever created. And controlling Death is a lot of fun with plenty of interesting ideas. First, you can become ethereal, which allows you to ignore gravity and float over pits, and even pass through many objects. However, the catch is that in this form, Death cannot interact with objects, so you'll need to defeat enemies and possess possess their bodies. This means you can become pretty much any of the enemies you come across. Slimes, skeletons, warriors, even bats, you name it. So it's a pretty intricate and impressive gameplay, I gotta say. Other than that, it controls pretty much exactly like a top-down Zelda game. You'll have to find your way through the dungeons, searching for keys and new powers to solve the puzzles, defeat the enemies, and get the hell out of there. Excellent game right here, Kharon's Crypt, a digital only so far. Next we have one that just came out and may yet become not a hidden gem, I don't know, but so far I don't see a lot of people bringing this one up, and it's a gorgeous game, Gunbrella. Yep, an umbrella with a gun. Brilliant. With this object, you can kill people, deflect projectiles, glide, attach yourself to zip lines, and protect yourself from liquids falling from above. All in one. Just marvelous. Plus, it's inconspicuous. Who is gonna suspect of an old-timer with an umbrella? So yeah, Gunbrella is a great game too. It's an action platformer with a little bit of a Metroidvania feel with big maps. Traversal feels awesome, a testament to the great skills of the developers on the level design aspect. The boss fights are formidable, probably my favorite aspect of Gunbrella, and the characters are likable. The story falls short in the end, but the gameplay really doesn't. It remains fun and challenging in the right amount throughout. This is a fine 9 out of 10 game, no less. I'm betting that this one will get the physical treatment sooner or later. Next is Game Boy Color style Curse Crackers for Whom the Bell Toils. This one is very cool. The platforming mechanics here are fantastic. It's reminiscent of Klonoa, but way more hardcore in every way. You have a chingling thing companion you can throw in any direction, similar to Klonoa, and you use it to attack enemies as well as downwards so that you can hit the floor, then bounce off of it and reach new heights, which is kind of hard to do, but very cool as well. Pretty tight controls on Curse Crackers. This is an excellent platformer right here, with long levels, hidden secrets, high replayability aspects, interesting retro style from the Game Boy Color, and loads of fun all the way through. Curse Crackers is yet to receive any discounts. It's a very recent release on the Switch, but it has been out on Steam for a while. This one has no physical so far, but I'm really hoping it gets one, because this is a special game for sure. Next, we move to Embers of Mirrim. This is a weird one. At first it feels kinda underwhelming. The graphics are nice, but the gameplay feels unpolished. But that's only true for the tutorial that focuses on the basic platforming moves, cause soon the game unfolds into the actual focus, which lies much more on the Embers gameplay. By pressing ZL and ZR, you split your creature into two spirit forms, a green one and a purple one, that you can fly around freely, controlling each one with one of the thumbsticks. This gameplay is very difficult because at times each Ember will have to be moved to a different direction simultaneously, and this is a task our brains have a lot of difficulty in doing, believe me, at least mine does. But this game in particular does a great job of easing us in and teaching this task incrementally. Much better than other games of this kind, like a recent one I played called Schizoid. Embers of Mirrim also provide cool puzzle platforming sections, hidden collectibles, and some very nice fast sections with well-balanced reaction-based gameplay. A game with the exact same ideas could have been a complete disaster, which is a testament to the level design and gameplay balancing skills of the developers. Embers of Mirrim is a great one if you like what you're seeing. It did receive a physical release too. Moving on to Lumote. This is a puzzle platformer more focused on the puzzles. It looks gorgeous, this game, right? The neon colors and smooth surfaces are breathtaking, and the gameplay is simple but effective. Your little creature can jump and double jump, but the focus lies on how it interacts with the environment. There are algae looking things that will expand or retract upon your touch, or with the activation or deactivation of pods on the stage. And you do that by riding some special living columns of some kind, but when you do, you lose your ability to jump. So there you have the whole puzzle dynamic of Lumote. It's, like I said, simple but interesting for sure. So yeah, Lumote is not a stellar game, but a perfectly solid puzzle platformer in 3D, especially now that it's receiving more than half off discounts. Lumote doesn't have a physical release so far. This next one is a recent platformer with a very cool idea and great controls. Gibbon Beyond the Trees. In this game you control a gibbon ape swinging from tree to tree. At first this is super chill, there is little to no stakes, you're just enjoying your gibbon life. This first section is all about learning the really well made controls and platforming physics in this game. You can either have the ape swing under the branches or run over them, which can be a good idea in downslopes. Later on you can also do a flip in midair to gain a boost, but very predictably soon humans start causing problems as usual. You will pass through a section with rampant deforestation and fires, and even worse later on, making the traversal more difficult and introducing the possibility of dying. But the game never becomes significantly challenging. It's much more about appreciating the ride, and it's a fantastic game at that. Very much a work of art actually, bringing attention to endangered species and the harm that we do as a society. This is definitely worth anyone's time and money, especially considering that there is a second campaign after the main one and daily challenges which are also pretty cool. It has gotten significant discounts so far, going for as cheap as $2.99. Gibbon Beyond the Trees is awesome and is so far a digital exclusive. And now we have the lovely Lil Gator Game. This reminds me very much of a short hike. The camera perspective is completely different, but both are cozy, low-stakes, lovely games. In Lil Gator Game, you control a child alligator who has made a whole adventure action game in real life with the help of his many friends and the friends of their friends, all in the hopes of getting his sister, who he hadn't seen for many years and is now no longer a kid, to go back to playing with him like they used to do when they were younger. It's a heartfelt premise with a nice message too, so it's very much worth seeing through. The game is inspired on recent 3D Zelda games, and I mean the game the kids created is, even counting with climbing and gliding abilities. But there are no real enemies, only a bunch of cardboards to symbolize them. Breaking the cardboards with your wooden sword is surprisingly fun. The broken cardboards and such are your collectibles / currency that can be used to craft new gear, which is pretty cool. So yeah, Lil Gator Game provides a lovely sandbox world to get lost in and explore. It feels much more like a 3D platformer with some real well done controls, and this one has been announced to be getting a physical release by Super Rare Games, and it truly deserves it, so grab that if you can. And to close things off, I have a very odd hidden gem here that is really not what it seems. Icey. Gameplay-wise, Icey is a side-scroller action hack-and-slash game. The controls are good, there's a pretty big skill tree of abilities to unlock and learn as you create your playstyle, and the combos are seamless to perform, making you feel awesome as you get better in the game. It's not a deep gameplay, so it's not so much for hardcore action fans, but enjoyable for sure. But this is just an initial layer that makes Icey an interesting title. This game is all about finding secrets. Seriously, there are tons of them. On top of the secret finding, there is an at first annoying narrator that comments on all your path-making decisions during the game, but the narrator starts off annoying on purpose, and it evolves into a fourth-wall-breaking meta-narrative that is rather interesting, although it creates a fractured storytelling. It's a shame that the voice acting of the narrator in English is a little flat most of the time, but you can change it to the original Chinese narration that provides a better sense of sentiment and urgency to the lines, so even if you don't understand the language, I suggest doing that and reading the subtitles. The writing here is very well done, especially considering that meta-narrative is a difficult thing to pull off, and ultimately I found it to be a refreshing narrative choice that made me intrigued to see the game through. And there is a lot to do here if you decide to see all it has to offer, surpassing 10 hours of gameplay. It also helps that Icey is among the cheapest titles on the list, going for $5 on sale nowadays, and it counts with a physical release but only on PlayStation 4, not for the Switch, even though it was announced, but in my research it appears that the Switch physicals were cancelled. And that's it for today's list. Look forward for more of these, as well as a continuation of my Xbox 360 coverage before they close down the digital marketplace over there. And I'll be getting back to the 3DS soon, now that they are also closing down the functionality to play games online, so very early by the way. If you like my work and want to help out, I rely on Patreon subscriptions to keep the lights on the channel, so I appreciate any help you can give. And don't forget to participate in the giveaway, subscribe to the channel and drop your comment down below if you wish to join in. Alright guys, that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you soon.